In a small, peaceful town in Pennsylvania, no one could have imagined that a horrific tragedy was silently unfolding right before their eyes. This is the story of Tanya Nicole Koch, a young girl who endured 10 years of living hell at the hands of a cruel predator. It all began in 1995, when Tanya was just 14 years old. Her life was suddenly turned upside down when her parents divorced. Tanya had to move in with her father and stepmother in the city of McKeesport. The unfamiliar new environment made her feel lost and lonely. Her relationship with her father and stepmother grew increasingly tense, while her biological mother had moved far away and rarely kept in touch. Tanya was like a small boat adrift in the vast ocean of life. When she started attending Cornell High School, Tanya hoped to find joy and new friends. But fate seemed unwilling to let her go. Tanya was constantly bullied and isolated. Each day at school became torture for her. Fear and feelings of being unwelcome consumed Tanya's mind. To escape reality, she began to fall into bad habits like drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, and marijuana. Just when she thought she had hit rock bottom in despair, a glimmer of hope appeared in Tanya's life. It was Thomas Hose, a 38-year-old security guard at the school. In the eyes of the naive 14-year-old girl, Thomas seemed like a kind and caring savior she had longed for. He bought her cigarettes, chocolates, and gave her spending money. When he caught Tanya skipping class, Thomas just smiled and let it slide. This favoritism made Tanya trust Thomas even more. Gradually, Thomas became Tanya's only confidant. They spent hours talking, sharing about the difficulties in their lives. Thomas always knew how to listen and comfort Tanya, giving her the feeling of being loved and understood that she craved. After just a few months of knowing each other, Thomas kissed Tanya under the school stairs. For the 14-year-old girl, it was the sweetest and most romantic first kiss. But behind that kind and caring exterior, Thomas was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. He quietly sowed toxic seeds into Tanya's immature mind. Thomas gradually isolated Tanya from her family and friends. He whispered sweet nothings in her ear. "I can give you a better life. You don't deserve to endure what's happening at home and with your friends." With sweet words of seduction and fake concern, Thomas succeeded in convincing Tanya to leave her family to come live with him. One day in February 1996, Tanya decided to enter Thomas's house in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, just a few miles from her father's home. She had no idea that this was the beginning of a nightmare that would last for 10 long years. As soon as Tanya stepped into the house, Thomas revealed his true nature. He immediately imprisoned her in the upstairs bedroom, completely isolating her from the outside world. The small room became a terrifying prison for Tanya. She was deprived of all basic freedoms, even having to use a bucket in the room to go to the bathroom. Thomas lived with his parents and 12-year-old son, so he had to be extremely careful to keep Tanya's existence a secret. She was only allowed out of the room when Thomas's family was asleep or away. Whenever guests came to the house, Tanya had to hide in a cramped closet, holding her breath in utter fear. On holidays, while everyone gathered together, Tanya had to curl up in the cold darkness of the closet. Tanya's life was confined within the four walls of the prison. She killed time by reading books, watching TV, or listening to the radio through headphones. Tanya's meals were just leftovers from Thomas's dinner. She was like a caged animal, completely dependent on her captor for survival. But the worst thing Tanya had to endure was the cruel abuse from Thomas. Every day she was raped and mistreated both physically and mentally. Thomas forced Tanya to keep a detailed diary of their physical encounters. He used those diary pages to brag to his friends about his accomplishments. For Tanya, each word in the diary was a deep cut into her soul. Fear and despair surrounded Tanya. She cried a lot, but the tears could not soothe the pain in her soul. Thomas was the only person she saw for the first 4 years. He constantly threatened and terrorized Tanya mentally, forcing her to obey his every command. Thomas warned that he would harm her and her family if she dared to resist or try to escape. Tanya was completely subdued by her captor's absolute power. 4 years passed in this earthly hell. In 2000, Thomas decided to create a new identity for Tanya under the name Nikki Allen. He introduced Tanya as a girlfriend who would be moving in with the family. From then on, Tanya was occasionally allowed out of the house, but still had to follow extremely strict restrictions. The first time she stepped outside after 4 years of captivity, Tanya felt extremely confused and scared. She only knew to obediently follow Thomas's every instruction, always worried about having to return before he finished work. Thomas gave Tanya money to buy clothes, but still tightly controlled her every move. He carefully instructed Tanya which bus to take, where to walk from and to. Every step Tanya took was under Thomas's control. Although allowed outside, Tanya did not dare think about escaping. After years of brainwashing and mental terrorism, she had completely lost the will to resist. Thomas confidently allowed Tanya to go out because he knew she had become a soulless puppet in his hands. The year 2006 marked an important turning point in Tanya's life. Thomas took her to a convenience store near their home. There, Tanya became acquainted with the store owner named Joe s.e.x.u.a.l.l.y. She asked to work part-time there, but had to keep it secret from Thomas because he wouldn't allow her to work. Each time she went to the store, Tanya had to lie that she was just going out for a walk. Through her interactions with Joe and his family, Tanya gradually realized that her relationship with Thomas was not normal at all. She witnessed how Joe treated his wife and children and began to understand what a real family was like. The pieces of her life slowly fell into place in Tanya's mind. She realized she had been deceived and used for 10 years. The idea of escaping began to form in Tanya's head, but the fear that had taken deep root in her soul prevented her from acting. Each night, Tanya lay awake thinking, torn between the desire for freedom and the fear of punishment. She was standing at a crossroads in her life, not knowing whether to continue enduring or risk everything to escape this earthly hell. March 21, 2006 became a memorable milestone. After many nights of struggle, Tanya finally found the courage to confide the truth to Joe. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I'm not who you think I am. I'm Tanya Nicole Koch. If you go to the Missing Children's website, you'll see me there." Joe had known that Thomas was much older than Tanya. He had also noticed the fear and strict control that Thomas imposed on Tanya. However, Joe was still shocked to hear the horrifying truth. He couldn't believe that the young woman standing before him had been imprisoned and abused for 10 years. With a trembling voice, Tanya begged Joe for help. "Please call the police to my house." Joe didn't hesitate for a second, immediately contacting the authorities. Just hours later, police were at Thomas's house and arrested him. Finally, after 10 long years, Tanya was freed from her captor's chains. At the police station, Tanya was reunited with her father after many years apart. An emotional reunion took place as the father embraced his daughter, tears streaming down his face. He said chokingly, "Dad's here to take you home." Tanya burst into tears in her father's arms, feeling safe and loved for the first time in 10 years. However, the joy of family reunion only lasted for a short time. When the initial shock wore off, Tanya had to face a harsh reality. Her father and stepmother were cold, even blaming Tanya partly for what had happened. They thought she had voluntarily left to go with Thomas. Those unintentional accusations were like knives stabbing Tanya's already shattered heart. In a painful moment, Tanya's father said, "You surely knew what you were doing." Tanya could only reply through tears, "Dad, I was only 14 years old." She felt betrayed by the people she loved most. Instead of being comforted and supported, Tanya had to bear suspicious looks and blame. Meanwhile, Tanya's case quickly became the focus of media and public attention. Reporters surrounded Tanya's house, constantly asking questions and taking photos. In front of the cameras, Tanya's father emotionally stated, "Thank God for bringing my little girl back." But behind the walls, the reality was completely different. Tanya felt more alone and misunderstood than ever. The surrounding community also had mixed reactions about Tanya. Many people expressed sympathy and support, but there were also those who criticized and blamed her. Tanya constantly had to face the question, "Why didn't you just leave?" Every time she heard that question, Tanya felt like her heart was being torn apart. How could they understand the extreme fear and desperation she had gone through? Once, while shopping at a grocery store, Tanya was suddenly insulted by a strange woman. This person called Tanya the kind of girl who's no good, and threatened to slap her. Tanya could only lower her head, tears welling up. "You don't understand what I've been through." The criticism and stigmatizing looks from society made Tanya's emotional wounds even more painful. During psychological treatment, Tanya gradually realized that her turbulent childhood had made her an easy prey for Thomas. The lack of affection and desire to be loved had blinded her into trusting an evil person. Tanya was also diagnosed with Stockholm Syndrome, a psychological phenomenon where victims empathize with and protect their captors. Tanya's recovery journey was extremely difficult and painful. She had to face constant nightmares, persistent fear, and anxiety. Every strange sound made Tanya jump in terror. Reintegrating into normal life was a big challenge for her. Tanya had to relearn many basic skills like social interaction, financial management, or using modern technology. The increasingly strained relationship with her father led Tanya to turn to her biological mother. She had abandoned Tanya when she was young, but now became an important emotional support. The mother accompanied Tanya during treatment, patiently listening and comforting her. The repaired mother-daughter relationship gave Tanya more motivation to overcome difficulties. While Tanya was struggling to recover, the process of prosecuting Thomas also began. The first trial was set for February 2007. However, just one day before the trial, Thomas attempted suicide. This action caused the trial to be postponed. In May 2007, the trial was again delayed because Thomas had to be hospitalized for mental treatment. Finally, in June 2007, Thomas pleaded guilty in court. He admitted to charges of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, sexual assault, and endangering the welfare of children. The court sentenced Thomas to a maximum of 15 years in prison. However, notably, Thomas was never charged with kidnapping. This made Tanya and her family extremely angry and disappointed with the legal system. Thomas was released in 2022 after serving his prison term. However, he was registered as a sex offender and had to be under close supervision by the authorities. For Tanya, the fact that the person who ruined her life was free was a huge shock. She always lived in fear that one day Thomas would come back to take revenge. After being rescued, Tanya tried to sue several government organizations for failing to find and help her, including the police and school board. She believed that if these agencies had fulfilled their responsibilities, her tragedy would not have happened or would have been prevented earlier. However, all the lawsuits were dismissed for various legal reasons. This made Tanya feel even more helpless and betrayed by the system. Nevertheless, Tanya did not give up. She was determined to turn her pain into motivation to help other victims. In 2011, Tanya published the book, Memoir of a Milk Carton Kid, the Tanya Nicole Koch story, recounting her entire horrific experience. The book quickly became one of the New York Times bestsellers. Through the pages of the book, Tanya hoped to raise community awareness about child abduction and abuse. Tanya's recovery journey continues every day. She has to constantly struggle with painful memories and feelings of guilt. Tanya often blamed herself for being too naive and gullible. But over time, with the help of psychological experts, Tanya gradually learned to forgive herself and overcome her painful past. 2018 marked an important milestone in Tanya's life when she got married. Her husband brought Tanya sincere love and unconditional support. He patiently accompanies Tanya on nights when she has nightmares, comforting her when painful memories flood back. Her husband's love has helped Tanya gradually regain faith in life and in people. Tanya shared that reclaiming her true identity was an extremely difficult process. For 10 years of captivity, she had to live under a false identity. Now, Tanya had to learn to get to know herself again. She had to rediscover hobbies and passions that had been buried while rebuilding social relationships. But after many years of relentless effort, Tanya has found peace in her soul. Currently, Tanya is striving to use her story to help other victims. She frequently participates in talks at schools, sharing her experiences to warn children about the risks of being deceived and kidnapped. Tanya is also actively advocating for bills to protect children and increase penalties for child sex offenders. From her own painful experience, Tanya gives advice to everyone, especially parents and children. If someone seems too nice, gives you gifts, only favors you, there may be a problem. Also, when someone constantly criticizes your family and friends, that's a warning sign. She emphasizes the importance of building healthy relationships between parents and children, so that children always feel loved and protected. Tanya's story has inspired many people. She is living proof that humans can overcome the most difficult challenges in life. Tanya says, "I want others to know that there is still hope after suffering severe psychological trauma. I am proof of that." In 2023, Tanya's story was adapted into a TV movie, The Girl Locked Upstairs, the Tanya Koch story. The film not only recreates what Tanya went through, but also highlights her process of recovery and rising up. Through the film, Tanya hopes to convey a message about the power of human will and the importance of raising awareness about child abduction. Today, looking back on the journey she has been through, Tanya feels proud of herself. From a small, weak girl imprisoned in darkness, Tanya has become a strong, courageous woman, ready to face her past to build a better future. She is no longer a victim, but a survivor and a strong voice for those who are suffering from abuse and violence.